Hello, everyone. Am I audible? If yes, just put yes in the chat if I'm audible. Okay. In this session, basically, we are going to create something called as a movie app, right? By the title, you might have understood that we are basically going to create a movie app using React. So we'll basically use a lot of basic ideas of React by creating functional components and by creating, um, let's say, by using context APIs and new state also. Okay. Is my audio clear? If yes, then just put a yes in the chat. If it's not clear, just let me know. I'll try something else if the audio is not clear. Is the audio good enough? And I'll also show you how it actually looks like, so we can basically um, just go ahead with it. Yes, we will use context, and uh, so we'll be basically creating a website, not a mobile app. We are basically going to use React, not React Native. Okay, I think that there is a lot of people have joined in. So let's get started. So I'll share my screen. We are also going to use APIs. I've created APIs already by using a data set which is created by my friend. I'll also share the link of the data set also. You can use that as well. So let's get started. Let me know if you can see the screen. Yeah, so I hope the screen is visible for now. So this is the movie app that I'm talking about that we are going to create. So this basically is the top 50 movies from IMDb, right? And used with best practices. And then you can search for a movie or a director or an actor. So let's say if I search for Tom Hanks, right? So it won't immediately search for Tom Hanks, but it will basically wait for some time and then search. So basically, I'm using a technique called as debouncing, so that the API is not called again and again. Now, even if I remove it, it will take some time, wait for some time, and then it will say no result found. Try something else, right? So this is what we have to create. We are going to use React. We're going to use VS Code, right? And we are going to use the APIs. So I'll put the API link in the chat also, so we can get started with that, right? Cool. So let's get started. I'm using VS Code. So the first thing that you have to do is just create a folder. So you can click on Open Folder and create a folder wherever you want to create a folder. I'll create on desktop, and let's say give it a name as Movie App. Now remember that whenever you create a folder for React, it should not have space. The name should not be capital letters. It should always be lowercase letters, right? I'll select this folder. Okay. So can anyone tell me how can we create an app in React? What is the command to create an app? Can anyone tell me what is the command to create an app in React? Right. So the command basically is npx npx create npx create dash react dash app, and then since I want to create everything in the same folder, I'll just put a period over here or dot. So it will create all the project file over here only. Now okay, so it should be npx, not npm. I said npm, npx wrote npm. So okay, cool. It will create the project file, everything, the source folder, the public folder. It will just create everything directly over here itself, right? And if you have any questions, you can keep asking the questions in the chat. I will basically answer your questions as well. Okay, so I'm just looking for some questions. If there are any questions, I'll take those questions and I'll answer those questions also. Okay, cool. So this actually takes some time. Whenever we are creating any React app, this actually takes some time. Okay, so there are questions. Yeah, we'll talk about the API also. So we are not going to create an API, right? I've already created API because in 1 hour everything is not possible. So we will use the API that I have created. Cool. Uh, Use TypeScript. We'll come up with a session on TypeScript also, Shubham. Don't worry about that. Um, okay. Yeah, yeah. I'll just add the APIs also. See, TypeScript. I'm not going to use TypeScript right now because this is just a beginner session, so I'm thought of using JavaScript rather than using TypeScript. We'll come up with a session on TypeScript also. Don't worry. Okay. So there's a question. Okay, so I can see there are a lot of people who answered npx React, create React app. Good, good, good. There's a question from True Knowledge. It says, "What is React Native and what is React?" So React Native basically is used to build mobile applications, right? By learning, so this is the benefit of learning React, where you can also build websites, right? You can also build web apps. You can also basically create mobile applications also by learning React Native, right? React Native also uses the hooks like use state and all of those things as well. So React is used to make your web apps or websites, right? And React Native is used to build mobile applications. Okay, okay. So, okay, so there is a question from Mati Ullah. Why did I use the period after app? So, suppose if I do not use the period after app, this dot, I have to specify a folder name. So, I have to write npx create React app and then space the name of a folder's name, right? But I already have created a folder. That's why I put a dot over here. So, it won't create a new folder inside the folder, right? If I write a folder's name, it will create a new folder. Let's say if I write npx create React app and then test app, so it will create a folder called as test app inside this movie app folder, and then create all of these files in the inside that test app. So it is folder inside a folder. So to avoid that and to create all the project files inside this one single folder, I have put this dot over here. Okay, cool. And then, so there is one question from Ankit Raj. It says, "How much time does it take to master React? Because I've just started learning it 3 days ago." So, see, roughly it will take you around 1.5 month to 2 months to, and it's not about you can't master React, right? You can't master anything. To be honest, you can't master CSS, you can't master JavaScript, you can't master React, but you can learn stuffs in 2 months that you can create your own projects. Like you can create an e-commerce project, you can create a social media project, you can create a traveling app project also by spending 2 months with React, right? So you can't but expect that you will master everything because it's difficult to master a library or a framework or a language also, right? But you will learn good enough things. Cool. Okay. Cool. Okay. Okay, great, Shubham. Great, you are a full stack developer. Glad to know that. Okay, so in the chat, if you see in the chat, there is a full stack bootcamp. So we have a full stack, we have a free full stack bootcamp. If I could show that to you, uh, let me just show that to you. You can register on that, right? If I go to courses over here, GeeksforGeeks slash courses. It's a free full stack bootcamp where what we are actually doing is we are basically conducting uh, 2 sessions, 2 to 3 sessions every month where we'll be teaching project building. And it's actually a free session. So if you see over here, this is the session, full stack bootcamp. It's a free course, right? So it's a theory course. You can basically read about it, read. So it has HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, Node.js, and MongoDB also. And you can read the theory part, and then we'll do Zoom sessions, live Zoom sessions, uh, project building sessions, 2 sessions every month for let's say 6 to 8 hours, and which you can ask questions, and we'll try to make one simple project in 8 hours. 8 hours is good enough to make at least a basic project, and where I'll be teaching, and some of my fellow mentors will also be teaching. So it's a very good course because you're not paying anything, but you're actually learning by building projects. So if you're interested, you can do this. The link is there in the chat, right? Enough of talking. So let's get started. Someone was asking the API link, so let me just put the API link. Uh, I've not created the docs yet, but I'll add the docs over here itself. inside the description. I'll add the doc. So this is the link. This is the API from where you can actually get the data. Right. I'll add the docs also. Create the docs in a day or two and put the link in the description. Don't worry about that. Cool. So let's get started. So the first thing that we have to do is see all these. There are so many files over here. Uh, Shubham, you're a full stack developer. I want the answer from you. Which files do you think are not required for us right now? Right? If I'm just want to create a very basic movie app, so which are the files which are not required over here? And anyone can answer, not only Shubham, right? Because I see there are a uh, lot of files which I personally feel are actually not required over here. So which are the apps that you all feel are not required over here? Files, right? Like let me start. So this setup test.js is not required. This report web vitals is not required. This logo, this index.css, this app test.js, and all of these things are not required. You can keep it if you want to keep it. You can delete it if you want to delete it. So first, what I'll do is I'll just remove all of these things, right? And I do not require all of these things. Just get rid of these things and get rid of this import logo also. I'll increase the size, and if you want me to increase it more, then let me know. I'll increase it more also. And over here, I can just write hello geeks, something like this. And in order to run the server, what is the command? Right? Just type in the chat what is the command in order to run the server. It is npm start. Cool. So this again depends on the speed, the machine, right? It might take some time to start this development server also. Okay, cool, great. Npm start. I can get a lot of answers. I can see a lot of answers in the chat also. Great. See, the more you'll answer, the more it would be. So app.test is not the answer. Jasminder, to start the server. To start the server, we use npm start. You can also use the yarn command also in order to start the server. Okay. I think okay, it's yours. Hello geeks. I can see it over here. Great. So most of the things I've deleted. Right. So the first thing that we want to do is we will basically try to get the data from the API, right? So I'll tell you the structure also, right? So how we can basically create, whenever you create a React app, there is always a structure. You create a structure for components, you create a structure for pages also. What are components, right? Components basically can be your nav bar is your one component, right? So let's come to this website that I've created over here. So over here component, this search bar is one single component, right? This movie card, this one movie card is one single component. In the same way, if there are multiple things, let's say there is a button, the button can be a component. If there is a sidebar, that can be a component, right? And let's say if there is a footer, that also can be a component. Now why do we use component? So since React is component based library, you can use a component on different pages also. That is why React is so popular these days, because of its component thing, right? Cool. So what we'll create components, right? But before creating component, what I have to do is now. Okay, so let's come to this pages also. What is a page? So one single page has a lot of different components. A page can have a navigation bar. It can have a footer, right? Multiple pages can have navigation bar and footer, right? Then a page can have a movie card, right? Something like this. This is a movie card. The page can have filters also. The page can have different sections also, right? So a page basically is a combination of different components. Cool. Okay. So first what we'll do is we'll try to get the data from the API. So what I'm going to do over here is uh, I'll use this only inside in the app.js only. I'm going to just write the code. So I'll just write import. It's an import use effect from React. Okay. Now I also want so in order to get data from an API, right? In order to get data from an API, we basically use the promises, right? So we can use fetch dot then dot catch, or there is something which is actually way but better. So if you all know what is it, just type put it in the chat, right? So something that is way much better is basically called as Axios, right? So I'll just install it. I'll just write npm. I can write in order to install a package. You can write npm install followed by the name of the package, or you can also write npm I and the name of the package, Axios. So I'll show you what Axios also is. So let's say if I write over here Axios documentation, right? So this is what Axios actually is, right? Generally refer to this GitHub page of theirs because the README has a lot of different things, right? So Axios, you can just read what is Axios, right? It's basically just, so it has these methods, the get method, right? Then the post method, right? The put method, the patch method, and the delete method. So you can read what Axios actually is, right? Cool. So okay, and just read why we actually also use Axios over the traditional dot fetch, then and catch, right? And if you know the answer, why do we use Axios or dot fetch and the dot catch? Just let me know. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do is over here, I'm just going to write import Axios from Axios. Since I've installed the package, I'll just write it over here. Inside this component, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a function, right? So I'll create a function, just say function, uh, or we'll use regular arrow function. So I'll just write const get movies is the name of the function, right? Now, right? So I'm basically going to use this Axios, right? But this for this Axios, so what I'm going to do is I can either use with Axios also I can use dot then or dot catch, right? But instead of that, I'll use async await, right? So async await is much better than dot then dot catch because it's async await. It will wait for the promise to come, right? Either it would be fulfilled or rejected, but wait for the promise at least to be settled. That is why we use async await. So I'll make this function an async function, right? I'll make this function an async function. And now, whenever we are using async await, there is no predefined way to catch the errors, right? With the fetch, we have the dot then dot. Let's say if I write fetch, right? So I have then the dot then, right? I have the dot then, and then I have the dot catch also, right? To catch the error, catch catch the error. But with async await, there is no predefined method to catch the error, right? So what I can do is I can basically use a try catch block over here, right? So even if you're coming from different programming languages, or if you're not coming from this different programming language or some other, in JavaScript there is something called as try catch. Try catch basically means you try the block of code. So this is the block of code, right? Over here I'll write some block of code. Try this block of code. If there is no error, then you basically execute it. If there's an error, so whatever message I write over here, so let's say inside inside this catch block, let's say if I write a message, right? I'll just say console.log the error, right? So try the block of code. If there's no error, then you proceed further. If there's an error, then display the error message, whatever was the error message. Okay, cool. So okay, so usual, the command basically is this thing, npm I Axios. Okay, npm I Axios. Okay, cool. Yes, Shubham, I will create a state. Okay, I can also console log the value also to see if the value is correct or not. Then I can store it in a state also. Okay, we'll go slow by slow. Okay, step by step. Cool. Okay, so what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to say const data equals to uh, await, async await axios.get, and then I want to get the data from the API. So I already have the API over here, right? This software that I'm using basically is called as Postman. Is used to test APIs, right? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to console log the data, console.log the data. I just want to check if the data is coming or not. Okay. Cool. So I've written my function, right? I've written the function. It's an async function. Why am you doing async await? Because this will return, right? It basically it's going to return a promise, right? So I'll basically wait for it to get settled. Cool. So yeah, cool. Now what I'm going to do is I want to actually call this function. Now I can't simply call this function like this. If I call this function like this, what will happen? It will continuously keep on executing this function or calling this function, right? So, but I want to call this function only once when the page reloads. So how can I do that? Right? How can I do that? Because if I continuously keep on calling this function, what will happen? It will basically continuously keep on calling the API, and calling the API is actually what we say is an it's an expensive task for the browser also. So we don't want to do that, right? We just want the data once. Whenever the page is reloading, we want the data once. So how can we do that? In order to do this, I we will basically use the use effect hook, right? So I'll write use effect, and in use effect, what I'm going to do is I'll have an empty dependency array, right? Why is this an empty dependency array? So that whatever I'm going to write over here, I'm going to call this function. So when I put an empty dependency array, this function will be called only once, right? This will it won't keep it won't call it again and again, but it will call only on the reload of the page. So if I save it now, right? If I save it now, all right, my server is still running, I believe. So if I go to this page over here, this was the React app, the Hello Geeks that I've changed. I can check in the console whether I have the data or not. So if you see in the console, right, I have an object, right? Even if I refresh it now, earlier there was nothing, right? But now if you see, I have an object, and then this object has a lot of different keys and its values, right? It has config, it has the data. Now this is the data, which is an array of object which has this number 250, basically is the length of this array, and it has the 250 movies, right? It has a status code also. If you see the status code is 200, that means it's successful. Whatever data I was asking from the API, I've got the data. Okay, cool. Is it clear till here? Does anyone has any doubt till here? If not, then we'll jump to the next step of creating states and all things that we actually wanted. Okay, the pace is really too fast. Slow down a bit, sir. Okay, okay, no problem, no problem, no problem. Okay, do you want me to explain this again? Should I explain this again, or is it okay if we move ahead? Or do you have any questions, anyone, with this? Any questions, anyone? Okay. I think people do not have any questions, so we can move ahead. Now, what I want to do basically is cool. The next step basically would be uh, since we've got the data, right? The next step would be to create the movie card, right? So, this card that was there, we will try to create this card. Okay. So, let's create a component for this movie card. And if you see that it's a very simple thing that I've done. Uh, there is the image and the title, the genre, the rating, and then the duration. That is what I've done, right? So this is my version, right? And I'll encourage you to try to create your own version, right? I've used the image and the name. You can add description also, right? You can create bigger size cards also, not the smaller size cards. You can create bigger also. Okay. So let's create a component. So what I'm going to do is in the source folder, I'm going to create uh, okay, a folder called as components, right? And then in this, I'll basically create uh, a movie card folder. I'll create a folder called as movie card. And inside this movie card folder, I'll create movie card.jsx and a movie card.css. Movie card.css. Okay. Okay. Uh, okay, so there are questions. Let me take the questions. So the first question is why explain the use effect. Okay, so the use effect basically is actually required to do some side effects. Now, what do we mean by side effect? Let's say if I want to get a data from an API, right? This is the data that I wanted to get from API, the list of movies or the list of products or the list of anything, list of songs or whatever is the API is giving us. Now, whenever you want such data from an API, you just want it the first time on the page, or let's say on the page reload, right? Or the second case would be, let's say if I search something over here, if I search for Tom Hanks, then I want it it to call the API and give me the data, right? So there are two ways. Either I'm searching something, it will call the API, get the data, or when I reload the page for the first time, or when I load the page for the first time, then I wanted to call the API and get the data. Okay, so there are two scenarios. Now when I have to do such kind of thing, then I use the use effect, right? So what in the use effect, what I do is the use effect basically has a callback function and a dependency array. Now this dependency array over here, it will determine how many times this function will be called. This dependency array will determine how many times this function will be called. If this is an empty array, this function will be called only once on the reload, right? Whenever I load the page for the first time or I reload the page, then only this function would be called. And then after that, this function will never be called, right? Until and unless I reload the page, this function will not be called. Now, these kind of things are only possible in the use effect. The second case is what I told you. If I'm searching something, it will call the API. In that case, what I want to do is I will basically add a variable over here inside this empty array. Let's say the variable name is search value, okay, or search result. This is the name of the variable. So whenever the value of this variable changes, then this function will be called, right? So the input, there is a search box, there is an input, right? Whenever I type something and then I change it, if I type something, I'll save it in this variable. Okay, I'll save basically it some in some variable. Whatever I'm typing, it will be saved in some variable. So if I put that variable in this array, right, in this dependency array, whenever this value changes, then only this function would be called. Whenever this value changes, then only the function would be called. So this is how use effect actually works. Okay, cool, right? So, and to explain this again, what we have done is we are basically simply, and then, okay, so let's come to this only. When we call this function, it's an async function, right? Why am I using an, because I'm using async await, because I'm not using the traditional dot then dot catch, right? I'm just using this async await. Async await and dot then dot catch are the same thing. It's just a sugar syntax, right? It's another way of writing the thing, right? Cool. And I'm using try catch because if I had been using dot then dot catch, then to catch the error something was there. But since I'm using the async await, right, to catch the error, I'm using this try catch block. So what will happen? It will basically try these line of code. If there's any error basically means if there's a syntax error or some error, then it will come over here in the catch block and then just log this error message, right? Or even if this API, let's say if it is dead and if it is broken, then also it will give an error, right? So it will basically just show this error over here. Cool. Okay, great. Cool. So let's create a movie card. So to create a movie card, it's quite simple. What I'm just going to say over here is export const and create something called as a movie card, right? I'm just creating an arrow function right now. I'm just going to write return, right? It's going to basically return a movie card, right? So what we are going to do is first I'll just create a container. So I'll give it a class name as so let's say card container, right? Card container, and then this will, let's say it will have another container for the image container. So I'll just give it a class name as, let's say, card image container, right? Card image container, and then it will have an image tag, right? It will have some source, right? For now I'm just writing this thing, and it will have an alt. Let's say it will have we just write movie dash card, right? I'm just creating the skeleton for it, and then we can basically add the actual data over here also because we already have the data, right? Cool. The next thing that I want is basically the title. So I'll just create a container over here, div, right? And just write the title over here, and just I can just add. I can add a span or a label. So let me just add a span, and I'll add the title. So let's say the title is the Shawshank Redemption. Okay, Shawshank Redemption. Okay, we'll use the actual data. Don't worry, right? And then after this, what was that? After the title, there is genre also, right? So there is genre, and then there is this thing. So for genre also, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create the same container, and instead of span, what I'm going to say is I'm just going to write something called as genre, and let's say the genre is drama and let's say crime. These are the two genres, because one movie can have multiple genres. And then there is rating and the duration also. So I'll create another container. Right now, this container, let's say it has two spans, right? So first span would be the rating. So let's just for now I'm going to write rating and then let's say 4.8, and then there is another span, and then this would be the duration. So let's say it is 142 minutes. Okay, cool. So this is the HTML part of it, right? There's no CSS right now. It's just the HTML, right? So let's add uh, the CSS also. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a normal image. So I'll just go to this API and just copy any image link from here, and then just put it over here for time being, so that we will be able to write the CSS also, because we have to write the CSS for this. Okay, cool. So I'll just give it a there's no need to give this a class name. I'll give this over here the class name as title, because this is title. For the span also, I'll give it a class name as genre, right? And for this, I'll give a class name. So I'll give it a class name of let's say ratings. Cool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add some CSS, or before adding some CSS, what we're going to do is let's see how it actually also looks on the UI. So what we are actually going to do is I'm just going to call it in the app.js, so that we'll see how it actually looks, and then we'll do the styling part also, right? And cool. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to say import movie card movie card from, and then it is in the components folder, inside components movie card folder, and then in the movie card, right? Okay, cool. So we have the movie card. So what I'm going to do is instead of hello geeks over here, I'm just going to uh, create an h1 and then just write the title called, let's say, movies, and below movies I'm just going to call this component movie card. Okay, so this will actually show us how it actually looks. So if we see over here, this is how it actually looks. The image is there, right? And if you see the title and the genre and the rating, everything is coming over here. If you can see over here, right? If I just zoom it over here right now, so if you can see, the title is there, the genre and the rating and the time is also coming. We have to add CSS, then only it will look much better, right? So to add CSS, what I'm actually going to do is first I'm just going to come up with some colors. So to get the colors, you can just search for uh, tailwind tailwind CSS, right? So you will basically get colors also. Tailwind CSS, RGB, RGB. Yeah, cool. So I've got the link. So this is the colors link. So I'll just put this link also in the chat, so you can get it from here. So take any color that you want, right? So I'll basically just for now I'll just take this color. Okay, I'll just make this as the background color. So let's add some CSS. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the app.css, right? And I'll just remove all the CSS that is there from here, right? Now I'm just first going to write a reset CSS, right? So I'll just say a reset CSS. If you know what a reset CSS is, just put it in the chat. So a reset CSS is basically to remove the default margin and padding on all the elements. So by writing asterisk, that means you're selecting all the elements. So I'll just say the margin on all the element is 0, the padding on all the element is 0, and the box sizing would be border box. This is called as a reset CSS. This is very important, right? Why do we do this? Because the browser actually by default will add some margin and some padding also, right? But then we will also add our own padding and margin, so it will add up, right? So what we'll actually do is we'll just remove the extra margin and extra padding which the browser adds, and we'll just add our own margin and own padding. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to create basically a root which will have the variables. So the first variable that I'm going to take is a background color, and I'll paste the color that I've copied right now. Right, this is the background color, and with this I'll also have a primary color also. So the primary color, or I'll just write primary text color. That would be the primary text color, and so I'll just take this color as a primary text color, right? So yeah, that's it. Cool. I want to change the background of the page, so I'll just take body and I'll just write background color is variable and then the background color. Okay. And the overflow X, I'll just make it hidden so it does not overflow in the X axis. Now, if I go back to check the page, so if you see the background color has changed, right? And if you see earlier, if you see now, there is no margin, right? There is no padding also, the default margin and default padding. Now, for example, if I remove this reset CSS, if I just comment this reset CSS, and then if you have a look, so if you see that the movies now is coming a little down, right? If you see that there is some padding over here, right? Because I've given it an H1 tag, right? The by default the H1 has some default paddings and default margin, right? But if I add the reset CSS, it will remove the default margin and default padding. Then if we check it, so if you see now, if you see the movies, does not have any default padding and margin, right? Cool, great, good enough. Cool. Um, yeah, reset CSS is remove default CSS. Okay. Now what we are going to do is we'll come to this movie card and then just style this movie card also. Okay. So cool. For the movie card also, I'll actually want a color. So I'm going to select a card color also. So I'll just take this as the card color. I'm just taking some random colors, right? I'll just say card background, or let's say card BG color. This basically would also mean that it is a background color only. So card BG color. Cool. So let me just split it towards the right so that you all will be able to see also. Okay. And over here, I'll just import this CSS also. So I'll just write import movie card dot CSS. Okay. So the first thing that I want to do is the card container. So I'll just say dot card dash container. I'll give it a width and a height. Right. So I'll give it a fixed width. So let's say the width would be 18 rem. Right. Uh, I'm not going to give it a fixed height because that would not be good, right? And the background color would be variable, and the card background color. Okay. And I'll add some box shadow also to this. I'll add a box shadow. Let's say 2 pixel, 2 pixel, 2 pixel, 2 pixel, RGBA, and 0, 0, 0, 0, point, let's say something 8. So this should be RGBA. So I'm just doing some basic CSS. Okay. So for the card, I'm basically adding a fixed width and I'm adding a background color also to the card. Okay. Cool. Now what I want to do is I'll just take the card image container. I'll just take this one, the card image container. Once we style the card, then the image, then everything will be done. The width, I'll take it to be 100%, and I'll add a height. So let's say the height that I'm going to add would be 20 rem. This is the height that I'm adding. Okay. And now I'll create an image. I'll create a class name for the image. I'll just write img, or yeah, or we can just say card img, card dash img, and I'll just say dot card img, and the width I'll take to be 100%, and the height also I'll just take it to be 100%, right? And then I'll just take the object fit to contain, and the position for this would be, let's say, center. Okay. So now if you go back and check it, so now it will actually look a little better. So if you see now, the card actually looks a little better, right? So it is actually trying to take shape now of what we were actually trying to make over here, right? So if you see, it's trying to take shape now. Cool, cool. So now, what you can do now basically is we can add some border radius to the container also, so that it looks much better. And if you see, there is shadow also. Once we add a lot of cards, it will actually look better. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to add some border radius of 4 pixels. That's it, right? Okay. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a container over here, div, uh, and then give it a class name. Let's say class name as card details, right? And add all of these things inside this container. Why am I doing this? Basically, is to add a similar color or a single color for all of them, right? Because all of them should be white in color. That's why I'm doing this. So I'll take this card details. I'll just copy this dot card details and then add a color, and the color would be variable and dash dash. What is the color? Primary text color, or this can be text color primary also. Cool. So if we see it now, so if you see the color is also changing. Okay. Now let's take the title dot title and just increase the font size. So I'll just make the font size to be 1.5 m for the title, and let me see it. So it is a little bigger now, right? Or we can make it 1.25 m. And that is much better. Okay. The genre size is better and the rating is also better. What we'll do is we'll just add a display flex to this thing. So I'll just add a display flex. So if I add a display flex, everything will come together. I'll add a direction flex direction of column, flex direction of column, and add a gap of, let's say, 8 pixels. Okay, this is much better now, right? And I'll add a padding also to this thing. So padding should be, let's say, 4 pixels. So it's not exactly on the edge of the card, but let's say the padding to be 8 pixels. Okay. Now, if you see over here for this rating, this also should have a display flex, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the ratings. I'm just going to say dot ratings, and in the ratings, I'm just going to say a display flex, right? And I'll just say justify content space between. Okay, cool. So now this card actually looks much better. So you can add your own styling and a lot of different things to this thing. Okay, uh, cool. You can make the styling the way you want to make it. Okay, cool. I'm not going to work more on the styling now. Let's, because we are running out of time. Now let's come to this thing. Okay, to the app.js. Over here now, what we want to do is, now we have one single movie card, but this is also not the dynamic data. It's not coming from the database, right? Now we want to uh, get the movie card, but from the database. So what we are going to do is, this data that I've got over here, right? Firstly, if we check the form of this data, it is nothing but an object, and inside that object there is another object called as, there is a key called as data, and that data has all the data, right? It is nothing but an array which has all the movie details. If you see over here, it has the rank, the name of the movie, and all of the different things. Whatever you can see is there, you can see it. So we want to get only this data. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to uh, destructure this. Okay, so I'm just doing a destructure over here, right? And now if we go back and check it, so now if I refresh it, so if you see, now I'm only getting the array, right? I'm just getting the array which has all the movie data. Earlier we were getting the entire object, right, with the success code, config, and all the things. But now I'm just only getting the data because I've just destructured the data. Okay. Now what I want to do is, since I want to pass on this data to this movie card component, now this movie card component has all the hard coded data, right? If you see over here, the source is hard coded, the title is hard coded, everything is hard coded, but we want the data from the API. So what we'll do is we'll have to first store it somewhere, right? So that we can, for that we'll basically use something called as state. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to use a use state over here, right? And then I'm going to create a state variable called as movies, right? And then use a setter function called as set movies is equal to use state, and this is going to be an array, right? So the default value of this movies would be an empty array, right? And then what I'm going to do is whatever data, okay, whatever data that I'm getting over here, I'll use this setter function to set this data to this value movies, right? What is a use state, right? So the use state function basically returns two values. It returns a state variable, it returns the setter function. By using the setter function, you can change the state variable. The use state returns two things. It returns the state variable and the setter function. By using the setter function, you can change the value of this state variable. So I can basically write set movies and then put data over here. So what I'm actually doing over here is initially the value of the state variable is an empty array from this line. On this line, when I do set movies and data, so what I'm doing is I'm setting the value of this state variable movies to this data. I'm setting the value of this state variable movies to this data, right? And we know that this data is nothing but this array, right? The data, because when we did console log, the data is nothing but this array. So this movies basically will become the array of that data, right? The array of this data that we're getting from the API. Is everyone clear? Let me repeat it. So what we first did is earlier we didn't have this curly braces right over here. We had just written it in this way, right? But with this, what we were actually getting, we were getting the entire object, right? With the status code, the data, the config, and all the things. But we just wanted the data, right? So we just use a basic destructuring, right? We must just use a basic destructuring. And now when we use destructuring, what we get this array, right? The array of all the objects of the 250 movies, right? And then what we can do is we have to, since we have to pass on this value to this movie card component, to pass on this value to this movie card component, we are actually using states. We are using state variable. And for that, we use the use state. Okay. Now, what does the use state do? It returns two things, a state variable and a setter function. Okay. So this setter function, when I write set movies data, I'm basically setting the value of this state variable movies to this data. I'm setting the value of this state variable movies to this data, and this data is nothing but the array. Okay, the data is nothing but this array. Is everyone clear? I hope everyone is clear. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is, now I know I can basically use this movies wherever I want to use it. Cool. So now what I can do is, since this movies is nothing but an array, over here I'm basically going to create a JSX, right? I'm going to create a JSX, and then inside this JSX, I'll basically write movies, because this movies is an array, and then I'll say if movies is there, right, and movies dot length, if movies is there and then movies dot length is greater than 0, right? Now this also can be written in one single statement itself, but since it's a beginner class, I'm just breaking it down, right? We can also use optional chaining. If you know what optional chaining is, you can use it over here. But I'm just saying, if the movies is there, let's say if movies is not undefined, right, and if the length is greater than 0, that means if there are some movies, then what you do is, then you call the movie card component, right? So now if I save it, right, now if I no, then directly I'm not going to call the movie card component. Then what you do is, then you do a map, then you do movies dot map, right? Movies dot map, get a movie, right? And then you call the movie card component. Okay. So now what I've done is, this movie is nothing but an array, I know, right? On an array, I can use for loop, right? But in React, we don't use for loop. We basically use these higher order functions, right? We use map, filter, reduce. So I'm going to use the method map on the array, and then map over this array, and then I'm going to call this movie card component. Now see what happens if I call the movie card component, and if I come over here. So if you see, I'm getting a lot of cards over here, right? Since I've not added any styling, any display flex, since that's why I'm getting it in this way. But if I add styling, right? If I add styling, let's say if I add over here uh, a main tag, right, with the class name as main itself, and then inside this main tag, if I add this thing, cool, and I'll just in the main I'll just create a sorry, display flex, right? A gap of let's say 1 rem, and then I'll just say also flex wrap to wrap. Okay, great. So now if we check it, so if you see, there is a lot of cards that is actually coming, right? Cool. So let's increase the gap to 1.5 rem. Okay. Cool. So if you see there are a lot of cards that are coming. There will be 250 cards because the API that we're using has 250 movies data, right? Now what we need to do is now we'll use this state variable. Let's come to the app.js. Now we are going to use the state variable, this movies variable, and then what we are going to do is, okay, so we have already used it. Now we are going to since we have this card component, this one single movie will be equal to the to every object, right? It will be equal to all the objects which are there in the array, right? Because we are doing movies.map. Just imagine a for loop, right? You have an array, and then array has all the objects. So basically, let's say this is your array, right? And it has a lot of objects, right? It has a lot of objects, let's say, and then the object has a lot of key value pair, right? So when you do a for loop, right, your variable will be equal to all the objects, right? It will be equal to all the objects, correct? So this is what we are actually doing over here also. When I do a movies.map, this variable will be equal to all the objects, right? Which I'm actually get, which is there in the array, right? What I can do is I can pass this as a prop. So I can just write movie equals to movie, right? So I'm passing this as a prop, okay? And I'll use a key also over here. The key will be movie or dot id, okay? Because I have id over here. Everything has a proper id. Okay, cool. Cool. Now what we do is, since we are passing this movie as a prop to this component, right? So if you do not know, we can actually uh, pass props, right, to any component. Now just break it down. What is a component? It is nothing but uh, a function, right? So if you go to this movie card, what is this? This is a component, but if you think about it, what is it? It is nothing but a function, right? Just imagine a function can accept arguments, right? A function can accept arguments, and by you can play with that arguments also. So in the same way, a component can basically accept props, right? A component can accept props. For that, you have to pass the props. Just way, if a function is accepting argument, you have to pass the argument. The function is, if the function is accepting an argument, you have to pass the argument. In the same way, in React, a component can accept props, right? Nothing but arguments, but values, right? It can be a value, it can be a function, it can be anything. So we have to pass it. So how do I pass it? I pass it in this way, right? I pass it in this way. Cool. So now in the movie card, what I can do is I can get the prop, right? So to get the prop, generally we write something like props, but this props will be an object, right? And then the object will basically have this key movie, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to destructure it directly over here. I'm just going to write movie, and then this movie has a lot of values, right? This movie has all of these things. So this is the postman that I'm using, right? So if you see, when I do a get request on this thing, right, I do a get request, I'll basically get all of these values itself. So from this, what I want the name, I want the IMDb rating, I want the duration, the genre, and the image link, right? So we'll use these only. Over here I'll just say const name, right? And then uh, IMDb underscore rating, right? IMDb rating, and then the genre, and then the duration, uh, and then the image link, right? This should be duration, and then the image underscore link, right? And this should be equal to movie, right? So I'm just doing normal destructuring, right? So since I've come React, learning React, I'm expecting that you would be well versed with JavaScript concept. Over here, I'm just doing a basic destructuring, right? So let's do the first thing. I have the image link. So what I'm going to do is, instead of this source, this link, over here I'm just going to write image underscore link, right? Over here, instead of this Shawshank Redemption, I'm just going to write the name, right? And over here, instead of this genre, drama, and everything, I'm just going to say genre. Over here, instead of this rating, I will basically add the what is it? It is IMDb rating. Okay. And then over here, instead of 142, I'm just going to write the duration. Right. Now everything looks very, very good. Okay, because no data is hard coded. Every data, basically, whatever we are writing over here is actually being passed as a prop to this movie card component, right? And where is it? Is it is passed over here, right? And where is this data coming from? This movies data. This movies data is coming from this API, right? Cool. Now, if you go back and check it, right? So if you see now, right now, if you see, everything is perfect, right? There is Shawshank Redemption, it's genre, it's rating, right? Godfather, it's genre, rating. Dark Knight, and if you see, the genre is not same everywhere. The image is not same everywhere, right? The genre keeps on changing. Action, adventure, drama, right? All of these things. Cool. Now you can add a lot of CSS to this, right? I will leave the CSS to you, right? I will also I'll add the API documentation in the link. The API documentation has a lot of things. It has APIs for genre, it has APIs for rating, it has API for search, right? And it has API for the movies. So I think these are the things that is actually required. And in search, you can search for actor's name, you can search for uh, writer's name, you can search for the director's name also. So I think it covers everything for this movie app. The API covers everything. Right? It's not only limited to one particular thing, right? But whatever you want to search, if you want to search the based on the genre, there is an API for that. If you want to search based on the ratings, there's an API for that. If you want to search based on the actor's name, the director's name, or the writer's name also, then there is API for that also. Right? I'll add the link in the description, and you can actually use it. Okay, cool. If you want to add more styling, right, since we have a few minutes left, right, and I can also take uh, 10 to 10, 15. Let's create Tamil rockers now. What is Tamil rockers? Yes, Praneeth. Okay, cool. Cool. What I can do is I can just style this movies. Okay. Um, so okay, okay, cool. So I'll just create a class over here. Class name would be, let's say, heading dash one, right? And add this also, let's say, inside add this inside a header, the h1. So I'll just create something called as header, and in the header, let me just add this h1 tag, and I'll give it this also a class name of header, and then add CSS for both of them, right? So for the heading one, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say over here, I'm just going to say dot header, and this also would be a display flex, right? Display flex, right? And justify content center so that it comes in the center. And well, I'll also add some padding also to this padding. Let's say the padding would be 1 rem on all the sides. Okay. And then what I want to do is I'll just take this heading one also and add a color to this heading one. So dot heading one and add a color, and the color would nothing but be the primary text color. Cool. So if we see it now, so it looks much better now. But if you see, then the if we scroll it, then the header also goes away, right? So what I can do is, see, if I scroll now, the navigation bar is actually going, right? I do not want it to go. So what I can do is I'll take this header and give it a position of fixed, right? Position fixed, and give it a width of 100 viewport, and I'll make the z index also to be 1. Okay, so if I save it now, so if you see now, The movies is not going anywhere, right? The movies is still there, but it is overlapping. So to solve this, for the main, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a padding top. Let's say I'll add it to be 8 rem, okay, and let's say the right would be 2 rem, and the left would be, and the bottom would be, let's say, 2 rem, and the left would be 3 rem. So if we save it now, so now if you see, it is much better now, right? And since it is again overlapping, for the header I can add a background color, and this again would be this background color. Now if I save it, now if you see, everything looks much better, right? Cool. You can add more css to this. You can add more padding towards the left hand side. So if I add more padding, top, bottom, top, right, bottom, left, let's say for the left, if I add 6 m, it looks much better now. Cool. Great. So this is the app that we were talking about, right? Couldn't add the search, right? The search, you can take it as a challenge, as a homework, right? So there are two ways you can do the search. You can either use the API, or you can either do it, you can also do it locally also, right? So for the search, first try the locally search without using the API, so it will actually create a lot of logic for you. Try to search by the actor's name, the director's name, and the writer's name. And as I told you, the link I'll put in probably by tomorrow. I'll just put the link. Do not worry about that also. So you'll get the link also. Okay. So one quick announcement, and then I'll take questions also. Right. Uh, Neoji. So one quick announcement. Uh, So at GFG currently, since it's a resolution day, all the courses we are having 20 to 20% discount on all the courses. So you can join the courses. This is the course that I have actually created, the JavaScript Foundation course. If you want to make your JavaScript strong, you can take this course. And there are a lot of free courses, as we discussed about this full stack bootcamp. This is a free course, right? And just to let you know about this free course. So what is this free course all about? So there would be theory materials would be available for you once you basically click on the start course or join. So you'll get theoretical things on all of these things, right? So if you see, there is React.js, there is Node.js, MongoDB also, and the price is zero. We're not asking anything. And then in every month we'll have two classes based on project building, right? So we'll teach you how to make projects. So see, I understand two classes is not enough, but every class it will be at least for 2 to 3 hours. So let's say in a month we'll meet for 6 to 7 hours and try to make a basic project. So we'll basically teach you basic functionalities, and then you can keep on building on those projects, right? So let's say creating a to-do app using React. Let's say creating something like this only, the movie app, and we can add something to this. Like, we created this movie app in 1 single hour, right? Imagine if we have 3 hours and we 6 hours, what all we can do, right? We can create a single movie page, a search bar. We can also learn to create our own APIs also. So register for this course because it's free of charge. We're not going to charge you anything. There's no hidden charges over here. And then you're also going to learn projects also. The more projects you make, it will be add more good for your profile itself, right? So you can register for this course. I'll put the link again in the chat. And if you want to buy some premium course, right? If you want to buy any premium course, you can come over here, and I'll put this link also in the chat. There are a lot of courses that is going on. There is this full stack live course also that we have, where we teach full stack development. I teach over here, and then there are a lot of other mentors from Microsoft, from Google, and Amazon also teach over here, right? And you can just check out on different courses also, whatever you want to learn. Okay, so that's it from my time. I won't stop the session, but if you have any questions, I'll take the questions also, right? I'll just stop sharing the screen. If you have any questions, you can just ask the questions, and I will be glad enough to answer the questions. Okay. Okay, cool. Sir, please make this kind of boot camp every week. We are planning on something. On our so there is another YouTube channel that we have. It's called as the Geeks for Geeks development channel. Uh, if you can search for it, I'll just put the link in the chat. It's the Geeks for Geeks web development channel, and you can check out this channel. On this channel, we have a daily life. It's on hold for now, but we will be starting the daily life from the next week probably. It has a lot of good videos, project videos on React Native, right? On React also using Firebase. So everything is for free, and there are a lot of it's totally on projects only. You can build a lot of projects, and it's been taught by a very good mentor. Um so you can check out this development channel also. Okay. Is there any course that anyone has? Uh, did you all enjoy the session? Do you all want more sessions such like this? How to improve React skill? See, to improve React skill, start by building basic components. When I say basic components, uh, let's say for an example, uh, the way we did it right now, the movie card, it's a very basic component, right? Once this basic component is done, try to create. Let's say now we have LinkedIn, right? So in LinkedIn we can post something. Try to create that component, right? Just it's based nothing but an input box, right? And the component should be such a way, like for example, let's say the search box, or you can let's say your tweet will have a minimum number of characters. Let's say the maximum characters you can add is, let's say, only 500 characters. Beyond that, it will basically try to show you that okay, you can't add more characters, right? It would stop adding characters. You can create such components also, right? So in this way you will basically improve your React skill and try making projects. That's the basic key. Make a to-do app, make a wish list app. Wish list to-do is one and the same. Make a quiz app, right? Try to create clone of different app. Try to do small steps, like for example, let's say now we created this movie app, right? So you can basically add a button on this movie app on the card, let's say wish list or bookmark, and if you click on it, it should be added to your wish listed movie, and you create a separate page for wish listed movie, and then you show that movie card on that page, right? It's a very simple logic. Just think about it. Just adding something to the array. So just make small things, right? It's not required that you make a very big project at a very single time. Make small projects, go step by step, and you'll master it. It will take time. It will take at least 2 months if you do it every day, right? And when I say every day, I'm not talking about 10 to 12 hours every day. Even if you do it for 2 to 3 hours every day, it is good enough, right? You'll um, start making projects in React, right? Don't focus on mastering something, right? And where you can learn, see, there are so many free resources, right? uh, told you about our YouTube channel itself. There are so many React projects with Firebase, React project with backend, normal React project. There are projects on React Native also. So many freely available projects on our Geeks for Geeks web development channel. The link is there in the chat. You can go onto the link and see the tutorial and then make the project. How can I convert my website into an Android app? Make an Android app. That is how easy the answer is. It is, right? Just create an Android app. If you know React, just learn React Native. If you understand React very well, it will just take you 1 week to learn React Native. And I'm not joking, to be very honest, because React Native uses the hooks and all the things. It's almost the same. Right? There are these tutorials also. You can learn it. Okay. Okay. Any other questions about the roadmap or whatever, or about the interviews or the jobs? Whatever questions you have, please ask. I'll be glad enough to answer the questions. I'll be there for more 5 minutes. Uh, don't worry. You can ask whatever you want to ask because no one knows you over here. It's not your classroom. So feel free to ask. How I learned React? Okay, so I learned React majorly from the documentation. Okay, so the React documentation is very good, and I also had a teacher also who taught me uh, React, and I'm very glad that I learned from him. An amazing personality. So I learned it from him now because of some issues. I can't take his name over here, but I learned most of the things I've learned from the documentation and learned from him also. Right? How to get the full stack developer job? To see to full stack development uh, is an amazing opportunity right now, because there is a lot of requirement for good full stack developers, and there are less good developers available in the market right now. Okay, so to get job as a developer, I'm not talking only about full stack developer, be it front end developer or a back end developer or even a full stack developer or any developer, mobile developer. You have to create projects. You have to show to the recruiter that these are the projects that I've built, right? Projects like an e-commerce, a social media, a travel app, a trading app, any project which basically has some user engagement, where the user can add something to cart, remove something from the cart, add to the wish list, something like that, right? And all of these are almost similar, right? If you make one e-commerce, you can make a lot of different things, right? I just made one e-commerce with React, and then I made a video library, I made a travel app, right? If you want project inspiration, this is the my GitHub also. Let me just add my GitHub also over here, so you can get my GitHub. Okay, I'll just put my GitHub link in the chat. This is the GitHub link. You can see there are a lot of projects. You can you can clone the project, you can run it locally also, and you can also see read the code also, the way I've written code. So you'll understand the code structure, the folder structure also, a lot of different things. Okay. Okay, so Om Bharti has a question which is, I'm familiar with CPP, but see, I see a lot of demand for Java developers. What do you suggest? Should I start learning Java and make it my primary language? See, it depends on your interest. Okay, firstly, whether you are interested in becoming a Java developer or not, because there will be a lot of opportunities for you with CPP as well. Because I think if you're familiar with CPP, then you would also be doing DSA also, competitive programming also. That I'm assuming, right? And so by with DSA you can get jobs, right, from your campus placement easily, and if you have made some projects also. But now the time is such that only DSA is also not enough, right? Since there is a lot now, this is happening because a lot of people are learning so many things, and there is a lot of talent which is actually coming uh, in the market, and people are coming groomed, skilled. People are learning everything. Even in front end they are learning TypeScript, Redux, Just, and learning so many different things, right? So you basically have to make projects also. Even with DSA you have to make a lot of different projects also. So there is a lot of demand for Java developers also. You can, if you want to become a Java developer, learn Java and become a Java developer. If you just want to become a web developer, right, something like a web developer, then you should learn. For me, I think you should learn JavaScript, learn React, learn front end development. You can start applying for jobs also. Okay, where can I learn React? You can learn React from anywhere. As I told you, go to the Geeks for Geeks web development channel. You will find a lot of things on React. If not on Geeks for Geeks web development channel, there are a lot of resources available on YouTube. Learn from them, right? Or you can also watch the React documentation also, right? If you're not understanding the documentation, we have a course on React, a free course on React on our Geeks for Geeks channel. You can go and read from there also, right? Okay. Prajwal, yes, Prajwal. Prajwal is asking what to do after React.js. Okay, so you want to know what to do after React.js. So once you learn React, learn Redux also, because Redux is a state management library. If you can learn Redux, or you can also learn Zuz stand also, ZUSTAND, Zuz stand. So these are two state management library, right? You should also learn TypeScript also, because a lot of people are using TypeScript. Learn TypeScript. If you have time, learn React testing library. If you do all of these things, you will be easily hired as a front end developer. At least you'll got internship तो मिल ही जाएगा आराम से. Okay. Advice for second year students: enjoy your college, enjoy your time, right? This will not come back again. Take care of your health, and don't be in a race. A lot of people are just running and saying hustle karna hai. Okay. Hustle culture is not that good. Just relax. Okay. Learn things slowly. Take time. Explore. Okay. Explore. Since you're in second year, explore. Just see where your interest is. Don't go after money. A lot of people say full stack development has a lot of money, 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs, 50 lakhs. That's why people come running, right? At one time, money does not gives you a lot of satisfaction, right? So uh, so basically just explore, right? Explore different areas, right? And keep learning. Do not stop your skills. Keep learning, keep making projects, and apply for internship also. Once you come in your third year, uh, make yourself so much equipped, right, that you can apply for some internship also. Look for some internship, right? If you're not getting any internship, do freelance also. And most importantly, whatever you make, put it on social media, right? Put it on LinkedIn, put it on Twitter. Just put it. And believe me, I have so many students who got jobs or internship just by putting up their projects on LinkedIn. And there are so many friends of mine also whom I know who got internship and jobs just by posting their projects on LinkedIn. Just create a small video of your project where you're actually accessing your project, using your project. Create a video, record a video, put it on LinkedIn. That's it. People will notice it, right? Okay. Om Bharti, familiar with DSA. Also, I've made a few projects in React. Can you please explain briefly what a primary responsibility for Java developer is? See, I'm not the right person to tell you about Java developer. Myself, I'm not a Java developer. I can tell about JavaScript developer, React developer, what they do. But and even with Java developer, let's talk about the backend part, because since I'm into development, I know the backend part. Let's say with Java also you can do create the backend part also, right? So what does a backend developer do, or a Java backend developer, or backend development with Java? What will do? Create APIs, right? Create APIs, maintain the server, check on the scalability of a database, right? How we can, get quicker responses, right? If there are a lot of people calling the APIs, the server should not broke, right? So server should not get down. These are the responsibilities of backend developer, right? Cool. There's a question from Yash. Is DSA necessary for web development? I'm confused. To be very honest, DSA is not necessary, right? There are a lot of companies who basically hire developers without DSA. But now this development that I'm talking about is only about the front end development. Okay. When you go to back end development, then they ask DSA. So if you want to come into development, you can start as a front end developer. HTML, CSS, JS, React, JS, Redux, right? A little bit of TypeScript. You can come as a front end developer, and then the company will teach you back end also. So DSA is not that necessary, but a lot of few companies are asking DSA, right? A lot of companies are not asking DSA, so you can take a chance on it. Cool. How to go out making project? It scares me. Start making project, right? Unless and until you do not start, it will always scare you. It was with me also. I used to be scared, right? Will I be able to make any project or something like that? Now just go on to my GitHub, just look at my projects, right? अभी मैं खुद देखता हूँ तो मैं खुद शॉक हो जाता हूँ कि ये मैंने बना लिया कैसे. Because there was a time where I was so scared of just making project. You should think, will this work or not? Now my project has a lot of things. It has a lot of APIs which I have created, a lot of good functionalities, right? So this is my GitHub. Just go on to my GitHub and watch the project. So just start by making the project, right? Start single thing. Make the home page, the product listing page, make the wish list page, the cart page, make all of these page, right? Just start. कुछ नहीं तो portfolio बना लो. Just start. Cool. Okay. If I'm good in DSA and intermediate in web development, will my resume be shortlisted? If your resume has projects, right? See, you have to create your resume in such a way that the person understands your resume, right? Your resume should have your projects. And when I say project, it should have the GitHub. It should have the live link, also the GitHub, right? It should have the live link where you have hosted the project, so the person can actually access your project. It should have the GitHub repository link also, right? A little description of the project. And when you say DSA, you should add your rank also, rank on Lead Code or on Code Forces or on Geeks for Geeks, wherever you can mention the rank. You should mention the rank also. So this is how you basically get shortlisted. It's not that you write, I'm an intermediate developer. You have to add projects. At least 3 projects should be there in your resume to showcase them, right? And I'm not saying that the project should have backend. Even if the project has front end, that is also good enough, right? That is also good. But the front end should be functional, not only HTML, CSS. Na. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React JS. Okay. Snehashish. I'm a commerce student. Can I learn programming? Yes. You can learn programming. If yes, where shall I start from? Okay, just start from basic HTML, CSS. Okay, um, I'll again put this in the chat. Oh no, not this link. I was trying to put some other link in the chat. This is our YouTube channel, right? Just start from HTML, CSS, learn JavaScript, right? This is basic roadmap, right? The HTML, CSS, just go slow by slow. Since you are not coming from a technical background, right? It might be difficult, but it will happen eventually. Okay. I'll put my LinkedIn also in the chat, and if anyone wants to connect with me, you can connect with me also on LinkedIn and ask questions if you have any questions related to your projects or whatever it is. I will be glad enough to answer and share resources also with you if you want resources also, right? And Snehasis, there are a lot of good resources on YouTube also, not only our channel but different channel also. You can just start with basic HTML, CSS. Just search for basic HTML, CSS. There's no need to buy any Udemy course. Like, just do it from YouTube. It will be good enough. What do you think about the off-campus hiring in the next 2 to 3 months, given the market condition? See, yes, the market has been a little harsh on a lot of people, but the result is that there is a decline in the salary rate. Okay, there's no decline in the job rate. Okay, even when you see there is a lot of layoff, the layoff majorly is coming from the non-tech or department. The technical field is still there, because recently I went to a college, I went to a university. I won't name the university. It's a very big university in Noida. Okay, so I was talking to their corporate placement in charge, and I asked them that is there a decline in the job rate from the company, but he said no. He said no, but to be honest, there is an increase in the job rate from the company. Okay, so basically, there's no need to fear. There will be decline in the salary rate, but still it will work. Okay, cool. Any other questions? Cool. So that's it from my side. Thank you for being such a lovely audience. It was great interacting with you. I will see you someday soon. Okay. Bye bye.